Major funding for these programs is provided by grants from HSH Nordbank and First American Title Insurance Company of New York, Perfect Building Maintenance, Allied Partners, Bank of America, Murray Hill Properties, SJP Properties, Greenberg Traurig LLP. Additional funding is provided by grants from Antares Investment Partners, Arbor Realty Trust, Athena Group, BRT Realty Trust, Burden LLP, C.B. Richard Ellis, City Habitats, City Investment Fund, Cushman & Wakefield, Eastern Consolidated, Essex Capital Partners, Helmsley Spear, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, Jackson Development Group, Meridian Capital Group, McSam Hotel Group, Newmark Knight Frank, Moynihan Organization, Muss Development, Palin Enterprises, Rosenthal and Rosenthal, Signature Bank, Sidney Fettner Associates, Stonehenge Partners, Studley, Sutphin Properties, the Wyckoff Organization, Extreme Construction and Deconstruction.
Hello, my name is Michael Stoll, host of Building New York. If you look at this map of this photo of New York, you see a lot of buildings. And my guest today has leased in the last 10 or 15 years probably 50 million square feet of space, and some notable space. And in addition to that, he and his partners have owned and acquired over 11 million square feet today. I'm very happy to have Barry Gosin, CEO of Newmark Knight Frank. So Barry, you know, we're contemporaries, a couple of years younger, a couple of years older. I won't say who's older or younger, but we were both born in Brooklyn. You were born where in Brooklyn?
East Flatbush, right on the border of Canarsie.
And you went to you went to Tilden. I went to the sister school. I went to Lincoln, right?
They were Lincoln, Lafayette, and Tilden were designed with the same by the same architect. It was basically the same plans.
And during when you were going to school, I think you had the paper route once, and then there was the grocery. But during the summers, you had the provincial, the Catskills. You were working up in the Catskills, right?
Used to catch the short line bus, go up to Monticello, walk into an employment agency, try to get a job. Got hired as a busboy. Spent 6 years in the Catskills between being a busboy and a waiter. It was a great experience. You
graduate Tilden, and you go to Brooklyn College for 6 months, and then you go to Indiana?
Well, I spent 6 months I graduated high school in 3.5 years and went to Brooklyn College for 6 months.
Okay.
Really didn't like living at home and getting on a bus and going to school. It was like Groundhog Day. Decided in June that I wanted to go to a Big Ten school, rah-rah, and applied to a couple of Big Ten schools. The only school that was accepting enrollment in June for September was Indiana University. So Indiana and Wisconsin, I got accepted to both. Wisconsin only had housing in Milwaukee, and that made my choice easy. And I decided to go to Indiana University, which was a great experience for me.
Now, at Indiana, your degree was in what?
History.
Right. And during the summers, you worked the circuit, as you said, the Concord, the Neverly, Grossinger's, and you met somebody who really had an effect on you. You met one of your buddies and classmates was...
well, much earlier than that. I mean, if someone were to say what got me into the real estate business, growing up in Brooklyn, they were lower middle class. I'm the only really successful person at the time, and that was all relative, was Fred Wilpon, who now owns the Mets. And He was in the real estate business.
Right,
which,
and you said he had he owned an apartment house and he had a red Cadillac?
well, he lived in Queens in a nice apartment, and I believe he had a red Cadillac, if I remember it right. And I was so impressed by that. I said, well, I like that.
So you graduated in Indiana, and your dad was in the home improvement building, aluminum siding and the rest. And you took a little leap of faith to do that. And what happened then?
Well, I mean, I consulted with my friends, and the idea was go be a broker, learn how to be.
So
let's
talk about that, because you became a canvasser originally. So what were you doing, canvassing? Because at 24 you started as a broker, and you really had an interesting thing because you accomplished a great deal at that time, the initial deal.
Well, I originally started out as a canvasser on a project that was a building that was built by Lou Rudin and Jack Rudin in 1973. They put up a spec building. They were right on 26th and Madison Avenue, and the market was about as bad as it ever could be. And the guy I worked for had an idea to convert that building into a showroom building, and he submitted the idea to Lou Rudin, got hired, and I went to work as his canvasser, and we spent the next 3 years renting all 550,000 feet of that building.
Yeah, and you told me, I mean, there was two interesting stories, because that building was a gift building. It was built as a spec building, but the toy building was at 200 Fifth Avenue, and you and your colleague in crime were able to move the toy industry to 41 Madison, right? A good number of them, Hasbro, Kenner.
When we started with the dinnerware industry, and we knew that if you create a critical mass of showroom tenants in a particular industry, the people that come from department stores to shop New York on those showrooms, if you get enough of them in one location, you'll create a market. We successfully accomplished that in dinnerware. We got Noritake, Denby, Wedgwood, Mikasa. These are names that exist even today. Put them in the building and created a giftware building and dinnerware building. And then we had the rest of the building to rent, and across the street facing us was 200 Fifth. We thought that would be a good target. Let's try to put together a toy industry segment of this building. And what we did was I got out on the street, canvassed, called a bunch of big toy companies, Kenner, Hasbro, Marx, Durham, Empire. Some of them exist, some of them don't today.
You told me a very interesting story. I think it was you either called the toy guy, or you called one guy, and you also called Lou Rudin. Right?
I was pretty aggressive, and Lou was the owner of the building, and many times I'd circumvent my senior to call Lou. And in the one particular instance, we had a deal going with Kenner, Gabriel, Hasbro, and they were all conditional deals upon each other signing, and everyone was waiting for the other to sign. And the CEO of Kenner was coming into the city, and I had this great idea to call Lou Rudin to ask him if next weekend he could invite, I believe his name was Bernie Loomis, if I'm not mistaken, to play golf, that he should take him to play golf. It was about 20 minutes of Lou yelling at me and screaming at me, who do I think I am to ask him to play golf with the CEO. And P.S., he got over really fast. He called the CEO, went to play golf, and we did the lease, and we rented over 200,000 feet to the toy industry.
And then for that, you and your colleague won the Most Ingenious Award.
1976.
So how old are you in 1976?
26.
26, so you had worked for one guy, then you spent a year with Edward S. Gordon, and then you came back, and then you're 26, 1976, and then what happens in 1978?
Well, after we developed a niche in the showroom area, so we then took over actually the New York Design Center, 200 Lexington Avenue, which is a furniture building today. It was empty. We actually convinced them to convert it to a designer building, rented that building, did a few other showroom type buildings. What happened, we had this little firm. Lou Rudin put us in business. It was called H.L. Richer and Associates. Harvey was my original employer. We were partners. We probably had 15 young brokers in our office. We were out canvassing and soliciting business. And then Aaron Grau approached us to merge, and that was fortuitous. One of the reasons he approached us to merge is we kept stealing all the tenants out of one of the buildings that he owned. He figured, if I can't beat these guys, I might as well have them join us.
Right, but that also changed your life in many aspects, because you go to Newmark at that time, who really had certain buildings and really owned property, and you really wanted to have the opportunity to buy a piece of the apple. And I think you had mentioned to me that your partner and dear friend Jeff Garau, and you wanted to buy a building. The first building you went to was where? That you and
Well, Jeff and I were very simpatico. I mean, we're very different, and it was a good match. I mean, he would run the inside. I was more of the outside at the time, and the goal was to learn how to buy property, and that's why I did it. I like brokerage. I love the action. I like making deals, but I wanted to learn from Aaron how to buy property. And when we joined forces, Jeff and I started looking at some properties. And the first deal we brought, we obviously thought we had the deep pockets of Aaron and his friends. We brought Aaron and Mike Steinberg from the Steinberg family. They own a lot of real estate, actually, and they walked through the first building that we were going to buy.
Which was where?
171 Madison Avenue. It was about a 106,000-foot building on the corner of 32nd and Madison, and they hated it. They absolutely said, we're out of our mind. We will lose all our money. We were going to go broke, and but we bought it anyway.
And it worked out, and you still own it today?
We still own it today.
And then you did property 27 Union Square?
I believe the next one was 27 Union Square. We then bought 1457 Broadway, a series of other buildings. In conjunction, what happened, the first few deals we bought, Jeff and I, pretty much on our own, and Aaron saw that we were not complete idiots, and he joined us, and that was
But this is Manhattan Island. If we go over the Brooklyn Bridge over there, you and Jeff and your partners were very strategic in Dumbo. Tell me about Dumbo.
A lot of life is serendipitous. You could say everybody can be geniuses looking back. I happened to be pitching David Walentis for the agency of the property at that time. He had bought it. He had owned it a few years. He was partners with the Lauders, and I think the Lauders wanted out of the deal. And David had asked me, would I and the Garaus be interested in the property, and I, not knowing very much at that time about Brooklyn, but having a feel for this is unbelievable.
You grew up in Brooklyn. I don't know.
Well, this was
a different part.
This was
down under the Brooklyn.
Yeah, this was on the water, across the water from New York. And David's view was this was Rock Center today, yet it really was far from being Rock Center. So it happened that his lawyer, Jack Weprin, was our lawyer and very close to Jeff, and before you knew it, we bought 50% of the property, and we remained partners for many years.
Now, what was Dumbo at that time? How many buildings?
I forget exactly how many buildings, but there were, in the low teens. It was about 2.4 million square feet of different varying properties and some land. And, David was a real visionary, very talented real estate guy, and we came in with the leasing program and dividing up the floors.
Which you were able to, because you were able to lease it until the property was rezoned and all the rest.
Aaron Garau used to tell us, if you live long enough, property would be worth a lot of money. He was right.
Now, besides Dumbo, you did some purchases in Jersey City also?
We own about 1 million square feet of property in Jersey City. We bought the old Statco warehouse building, 600,000 feet. We own another 400,000 foot building in Jersey City. And we continue to own them today.
Right, and besides the ownership, you know, because I'm going to get to the ownership of what you're doing later on, I just want to talk about the major property in Bethlehem. You have been involved with certain major leases, and I think one of them, which is very notable, was the Bloomberg lease. Let's talk about that.
Well, sort of, I guess to back up to get to that point, you know, I always felt that the ownership background and foundation was a great foundation upon which to represent tenants. I mean, who better than a landlord to represent a tenant? Understands how landlords think. I've always also looked at it that, you know, would I accept advice on raising my children from someone who doesn't have children? And I'm one of those people, if someone's going to give me advice, I hope they have children and their own experience. So we always felt that there was a great opportunity for us to get on both sides of the fence, do brokerage, in part because we also looked at the markets, put our money where our mouth is when the markets were going up and down, so we could actually advise a client on when to lease space and when to pull out based on our own ability to examine the market from the equity point of view. So Bloomberg was the culmination of years and years of many big leases we represented.
Yeah, but that's that's very notable. Let's talk about that for a second.
Well, one of the people that worked for me found a way in to see Mike, and we set up just like any meeting. We're going to come in and have a meeting about real estate, introduce ourselves. We went in and looking through their space and looking at the Bloomberg and how they were set up, it was obvious to me, as it was probably obvious to Mike, that they were in three different buildings, 17 floors.
But then you had to also deal with the developer of the new building.
Well, Mike said to us, when we said, you should consolidate, you should have bigger floor plates, here's an opportunity, your lease is expiring in a few years, you need to start it now. He agreed. We said, we think we can do it economically, it can make sense. Mike was quick. He said, if you can show my real estate director that it made sense, I'm interested. But he gave us about a 4-block radius on which to look. So there weren't a lot of choices. And Vornado was sitting on the Alexander site
for about 20 years.
For a long time. They had always been talking about doing residential and doing Nordstrom's. Nordstrom was there, and Steve didn't really want to do an office building. So at first we met with Kevin Wang, who worked for Vornado, and Kevin thought it was a great idea to try to move Bloomberg there. We got Buyer Blinder Bell to do a rendering of the building, and showed it to Mike, and Mike loved the idea. And we spent the next 2 years dotting every I, crossing every T, and actually designing the building all together over the course of time to be one of the great buildings in New York City, and probably one of the great workspaces of all the clients that I've represented over the years.
Now, during this period of time, I know that you and your partners are also involved. And this is interesting because it's Mike Bloomberg has some decision on it. You own property in Coney Island right now, I believe, and in Flushing. So you have.
Well, we're opportunistic. I mean, we generally don't buy first-class office buildings because it competes with our clients. So we like to look for the stuff that won't interfere with our everyday brokerage business, and we look for creative opportunities. So. Jimmy, as you know, was out in Coney Island looking at a bunch of opportunities. We fell on Coney Island. We were competing in the bidding process against friends of ours, but we only learned after it cost us quite a few bucks. We learned who the guys were bidding on it, and we decided to go together and try to buy it. And
now, let's talk. You talk about your creative. How did you, a guy who grew up in Brooklyn, who spent your career mostly over here, get into Bethlehem, Pennsylvania? Because that's an interesting story. I mean, your partners right now are doing what in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania?
Well, we're doing an amazing project, and again, this is one of those accidents that you wait 30 years by working hard to get to. And this is also where being in the brokerage business and meeting people and having friends and
tell
clients.
my audience a little bit about this.
So get a call from Rick Fishbein, who was a lawyer at Fishbein Badillo, friend of mine, always looking at opportunities, got control of the Bethlehem Steel site, begged me to go look at it. Took him 3 weeks to drag me to the site. And I walked onto the site, and there were 3.3 million square feet of buildings, steel and brick and glass and blast furnaces that were 250 feet high and 2 blocks long. There was a machine shop building that actually is 1/3 of a mile long, 120 feet high. The ceiling is 120 feet high and 120 feet wide, and was awestruck by the site. And pretty much within an hour looked at this and said, barring the environmental issues and some other impediments that might crop up, we wanted to do this deal.
So you bought the site for what purpose originally? I mean, this was the entire Bethlehem Steel Works in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania.
I love the fact that when we said we bought the Bethlehem Steel Factory, the next question that everyone used to ask us, well, what are you going to do with it? And to be honest with you, we weren't sure what we were going to do with all of it, but the old Bethlehem Steel headquarters is a beautiful old, actually it was Stanford White had a hand in its design. It was building about 500,000 feet, great residential conversion. It's in the inner city on the south side of Bethlehem. Many cities around the country are converting their old stock of industrial buildings into apartments, even small cities in the west and the east. And to me, I thought that the cost of the bricks and mortar, I couldn't really lose money.
So tell my audience, what are you doing with it now?
Well, as happened, Pennsylvania passed gaming, and they decided they were going to do 5 free casino licenses. They have 7 racetracks that have VLTs in addition, and 3 in Philadelphia, 2 and 1 in Pittsburgh. There were 2 open licenses. This is an hour and 20 minutes from New York. Route 78 corridor, it's, as someone said, it's like a big straw. Easy to take people through it to Bethlehem very fast. And when they passed gaming, there were a set of guidelines and things that you had to do, and involved tourism and civic and economic development. So we put together a team to designers and engineers and environmentalists and historic preservationists, and began the process of formulating a plan to go get a license and master plan the entire site. I had negotiated a lease for Barney's in Las Vegas in the new Palazzo, which just opened. Got to be friendly with the president, Rob Goldstein, and asked Rob, would you be interested in being our partner on this site? And they came out, looked at the site, kind of got it the way I did when I walked the site, saw the history and the steel theme and the fact that, you know, the World War II was built on this site. Most of the buildings in Manhattan, the steel was created on this site. And the blast furnaces and the machine shops and the high house and all these great buildings were a very compelling story to get a casino license. And we didn't really have a godfather in Pennsylvania. We had no experience in Pennsylvania. But what we had is a project that was so interesting and so in line with the history of Pennsylvania and certainly this area, and the magnetic quality to the residents. Their fathers and their grandfathers worked in the mills, and they wanted to see something happen. So what we did on this site, we donated some land to the National Museum of Industrial History, which is accredited by the Smithsonian. and they're going to interpret the steel on the site. They are going to provide docents to have an interactive experience. We gave lands to Music Fest and Art Quest, Hispanic Ballet. We donated a building to the city for their tourist center. Where a PBS in the Lehigh Valley is going to open up a live studio on the site. We made that part of our presentation to the Gaming Commission. We're putting and the Venetian, who is building it.
So you're going to have a Venetian casino.
Actually, it's not it's called Bethworks. I don't know that that's exactly what they'll call it, but the trick to getting the license in that town, which is Christmas City, was to really make the constituency understand that this is not Vegas and this is not Atlantic City. This is one casino. The building that's going to house the casino looks like a steel mill. It's steel, it's glass, it looks very much like it could have been there, even though it's contemporized. 200,000 feet of retail, 300-room hotel, 100,000 foot convention center. There's about, I believe, 50,000 feet of restaurants, all brought in by the Las Vegas Sands. It's not going to be a Venetian concept, but it's part of the Las Vegas Sands.
So let's get back to New York. I mean, I know that you've been involved with many charitable involvements, but the New York City Partnership is one that that and FEGS have been two of your major.
Well, Federation Employment Guidance, which is a social services organization and has many facets of what they do, all social service issues, employment, handicap, mentally challenged, and they serve 50,000 people a year in the New York area. It's an enormous and great charity. I find that an amazing organization. And I spent some time on that, and I have a variety of other charities. I really enjoy the New York City Partnership.
You have two daughters. One of them is going for her social work.
She's got her master's in social work.
Master's in social work, and the other one is in college.
No, the other one is married in Boston.
Okay. Would you ever want your children to be in the real estate business?
Well, there's a variety of different businesses. I mean, the brokerage business, which I've grown to love, and I like the advisory business and all of the action and the interaction with all the great people that we meet, and the intellectual challenge of doing many of these transactions requires the natural selection process. I mean, basically, if you're not hungry, so
the kid who started 57 years ago in Brooklyn, who was very hungry and very aggressive, and who's done a great job for the community, has truly been a builder in New York, and I'd like to thank you for being here today.
Sure.
Major funding for these programs is provided by grants from HSH Nordbank and First American Title Insurance Company of New York, Perfect Building Maintenance, Allied Partners, Bank of America, Murray Hill Properties, SJP Properties, Greenberg Traurig LLP. Additional funding is provided by grants from Antares Investment Partners, Arbor Realty Trust, Athena Group, BRT Realty Trust, Burden LLP, C.B. Richard Ellis, City Habitats, City Investment Fund, Cushman & Wakefield, Eastern Consolidated, Essex Capital Partners, Helmsley Spear, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, Jackson Development Group, Meridian Capital Group, McSam Hotel Group, Newmark Knight Frank, Moynihan Organization, Muss Development, Palin Enterprises, Rosenthal and Rosenthal, Signature Bank, Sidney Fettner Associates, Stonehenge Partners, Studley, Sutphin Properties, the Wyckoff Organization, Extreme Construction and Deconstruction.